Direct from Montreal, Canada, this is Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. I, of course, am your host, Mitch Lafon, and joining me on the phone from the band, the legendary band Angel. It is the one and only Punky Meadows. He and Frank Dimino have resurrected the band, and they have a new album out called Risen. See what I did there? You see what I did there? Anyway, well, you know what? I have 40 minutes of me and Punky dissecting Angel, so let's just get right to it. Here is the one and only, from the band Angel, Punky Meadows. We're speaking with Angel's Punky Meadows. The new album, of course, is Risen, and as we say in Montreal, bonjour, Punky. Comment allez-vous? How are you?
Bonjour, comment allez-vous?
Good. Pleasure to talk to you. The last time we spoke, it was, well, I'm trying to think. It was at that Rock Carnival event. remember that?
Yeah, that was that 3-day festival thing that got rained out by everybody.
Yeah, and then they spent their time not paying anybody. And we also talked about your Fallen Angel album, I think was the last
Right,
time.
yeah. Well, luckily we got paid that night, but some others didn't get paid from what I understand. All kinds of lawsuits went on and all kinds of stuff, but that's neither here nor there. That was a while back. It's water under the bridge now.
Water under the bridge, and that's why we're here to talk about Risen, the latest album. So let's get right into this. You know, the band, of course, had been apart for many, many years, and Frank was working on his stuff, and you were working on your stuff, and you never seemed to be working together. Who sort of orchestrated or got the idea of, you know, instead of working in your corner over there and you in that corner, why don't you work in the same room?
Well, what happened was, you know, Frank did his solo record first, and he went out with that. And then I did mine, and I went out with that. And then there was some discussion about maybe Frank's band and my band working together, doing some shows. And then we thought, well, you know, that's really not logistically a good idea, you know what I mean, because we'd have to travel Frank around and play him, and you know, and fly his band around and my band around. So we decided, you know, we talked to Frank, and a lot of people wanted, you know, a lot of the fans, Angel fan wanted us to get back together and do another Angel record and that sort of thing. So Frank and I decided to go out as Punky Meadows and Frank Dimino of Angel, and we did that for just about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and it did really well. We went to the UK and Belgium and France and Scotland, all over the place around there, and we toured around here too in the United States, and that did really well. So that was Punky and Frank from Angel. So then we decided, well, rather than doing two solo albums again, why don't we do an Angel album? Because we talked about it, and it seemed like the timing was right. People were ready for it. And so we discussed that, and then we decided to, and then Cleopatra came in and gave us a record deal that was great. They're a great record company. They gave us a deal. So Danny, Farrow, Frank, Dimino, and myself, we decided to go in the studio. We wrote some songs, you know, a bunch of songs, and I'm a pretty prolific songwriter anyway. I'm always writing songs, and so is Danny, you know, so we write a lot of stuff together. So we had a bunch of songs down, and we decided to, you know, to go in the studio. And we also used my band, that was the Fallen Angel band, and as Angel, and it was a lineup when Frank and I did our thing together at first, because I have a lot of great players in my band. You know, Billy Orico on drums, and Steve O'Jane on bass, Charlie Calv on keyboards, of course Danny Aniello and Frank and myself. And so it's a great band, great musicians, and really good guys. And there's not a lot of big egos involved, but it's really cool. So we all get along, which is such an important thing. But so we decided to go in the studio and with Cleopatra Records, and we went in there and we knocked it out, and it just came out great. I mean, it's a great album. People love it. It's getting rave reviews all over the world. It charted on Billboard charts, 4 charts. It's just getting, everybody thinks it's the best record ever. You know, just about. I mean, one guy wrote a review saying, you know, if this record could get out to the mainstream audiences, he thinks it could save rock and roll. It was one of those kind of things, you know, and so the album's doing really well, so we're really pleased about that. And we're getting ready to do this Rock Carnival cruise. It's called the Legends of Rock Cruise. We're going to be doing that at the end of February here. And then we'll be touring all up and down the East Coast in April and May. And then then we'll be doing the Midwest. And then we're also going to go to Japan and in April as well. So we're doing Japan over there. We haven't been there since late 70s, Angel hasn't. So we're doing a bunch of shows over there, which is going to be great. And so anybody that wants to see our tour dates, they can go to www.angelbandofficial.com, and you can get tickets and that sort of thing, and see what our tour schedule is. Well, of course, we'll be going out to the West Coast again too. We just did the West Coast about 4 months ago, I think it was. And so we have a lot of shows to do, a lot of touring coming up. So we're really excited about that because we love playing live, and it's just exciting. So we're having a great time, man. It's awesome.
It is awesome, and so because it's particularly awesome for you because you did step away from the music business for a good 10 years, if not longer.
Longer, yeah.
Yeah,
longer.
Like almost 10 or 15, right?
Yep.
Talk to me about that, where you got to a point where you just said, the hell with this, I'm putting down the guitar, and I'm going to go open a tanning salon, I'm going to go be a businessman. Was it you were just disgusted with the music business? Was you just, hey, listen, Angel how was that?
What happened was, Casablanca kind of folded, record company Casablanca. Neil Bogart had gotten the axe from Casablanca for appropriation of funds or whatever it was. And so in the meantime, we couldn't record, Angel couldn't record or do anything because we were still under contract with Casablanca, so we couldn't shop for another record deal. So we wound up splintering off. Greg and I went in one direction, and then Frank and Barry went another direction, and we all did kind of solo things like Greg and I teamed up, and we did some demos and shopped some deals. But things were just, the record company it just weren't working out, and I just got to a point where I had enough of the whole thing. The record business. I mean, I love music, I love playing music, but the record business, I just, it sucks. I just never liked the business. It's a bunch of sharks. You know what I mean? And it's an unfair playing field. When you're dealing with lawyers and managers and booking agents and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so I just got tired of the whole thing. Got disenchanted, and I left LA and went back east, and I was a DJ for 6 years, and cool with that, I was doing a lot of DJing and stuff like that. And then I went from there into my own business and opened tanning salon up, and it did really well. And then through that, I got in the stock market and bought properties and things like that, and did really well. And I did that for about 11 years, and then I retired actually and moved to North Carolina. But all that time I had never stopped playing. I mean, I played my guitar every night, and I still do. When I'm watching TV, nobody can watch TV with me because I play along with the commercials and everything else. And I have a little tape recorder next to me, and so whenever I'm, like I said, I'm a pretty prolific songwriter, so I'm always writing things, and I never stop playing. I mean, guitar is something not that I want to do; it's something I have to do. It's in my blood. It's like breathing, And I kind of woodshedded too. I got into different types of music. I got really into country music and stuff, which I love, so I actually became a better guitar player over that time. Actually, just from doing different stuff and getting away from that kind of heavy stuff after a while. But so then Danny came around, my partner in crime, Danny Aniello, and offered me a solo deal. And so I was excited because I wanted to start playing again. So we decided to do that, and of course that's history now. But that did really well, and we had a great time. And then that led up to the Angel thing, and Frank and I together again, and then the album now. So it was just the music business was it's just tough. You know what I mean, out there, and also the whole grunge thing was coming into at that time. You know what I mean, so. Everything was kind of changing and stuff. Now, of course, now the business is totally different, with streaming and all that kind of stuff, But so it was. I needed a break, and I took the break, and I was really happy. I did a lot of things that made me happy. I was a businessman, like you said, and I enjoyed that. And I'm pretty focused when I do something. I have tunnel vision. I'm pretty good at researching things, and I did really well with all that. So. But I never stopped playing. I love guitar. It's my life. It's my blood. And so. So I kept on playing and writing, and here we are, and I'm still writing. I'm writing a bunch of songs now.
Yeah, well, okay.
For the next album.
Well, so let me ask you that. When you and Frankie, or you and Frank get together, you do Risen, you do these tours, you've got these shows. Now that Risen is out, is that sort of like we've reached our goal and that's it, we're done? Or is Angel a current entity that is going to move forward, and we're going to have this same interview in 5 years from now?
No, yeah, we're moving forward. It's as Angel now. Like I said, we're writing right now for the second album. I mean, Danny and I are saying we should get in the studio right now, but of course we can't because it's too soon. But no, we're gonna keep touring, and we're gonna be Angel. This is Angel now, Angel, today. And what's really great about this album, is it has a classic rock feel to it, but yet it has a modern sound to it too. And it's everybody's saying how great this album is, because it's a lot of bands that have been around for a while, they kind of come out, they're kind of shadows of themselves. I mean, they're not. But this album sounds really young and fresh, and it's and it's exciting, and it's very diversified, and it's a killer record. I mean, people love it, and I love it too, because it's just, I'm very pleased with it. Of course, Danny and I produced it, and we wrote all the songs and stuff, and so I'm excited about it. So yeah, this is Angel now. We're doing this, and I'll do this till I die. I mean, I love playing. Playing is not something that to me is a job. It's. I mean, I guess you can say it's a job, but it's really not a job to me. When you love it, like they say, it's not a job, and when you love something you're doing. I love playing, and I love touring. We're touring all over the world. So that's a lot of fun too, and I mean, it gets a little tough, the traveling, but playing for the fans all over the world is great. We love that, and so we're having a great time. It's a renaissance, and we're just having a great time doing it.
Wow, the band has these shows coming up. I'm going to have to get to one. I absolutely have to get to one. But okay, so when you get back together and you make Risen, do you look at the past catalog and say we have a sound and we need to recapture that sound, or do you look forward and say, okay, that was the 70s, this is where we are in whatever 2018, 2019, and we just need to create something new? How do you sort of connect the past with the present without alienating fans and not alienating the sound and still being Angel? How do you sort of make it all come together where Angel 2020 is the band?
Well, the thing about Angel that I was always said and always was pleased about, Angel's not a one-trick pony. A lot of bands, you hear their first song on their album and you've heard the whole album basically, and that, which is cool. It works for a lot of bands, but like if you hear our first and second album, it's more of a progressive kind of a thing, like Led Zeppelin meets Yes or something, or that sort of thing, And then as we went on, we got to be more of a power pop band, and that sort of thing. But with the synth and stuff, which I love too. I mean, I'm the kind of guy that I love ABBA. And David Cassidy, but I love Led Zeppelin and Hendrix, and then I cut my teeth on all the British blues guitar players, so I love all that stuff too. So I have a real diverse love for music, and like I said, I love country music too. So whenever I write a song, I don't write a song saying, is this good for Angel? I write a song that I'll hear something in my head, and I'll say, this is cool, and I'll write a riff, or a lot of times I write the whole songs, or choruses come first, whatever the case may be. And I think this is going to be a great song, and I just stick it in there. I say, okay, this is when Frank sings it, and I play my guitar on it. It's going to sound like Angel no matter what. But like I said, Angel was on a one-trick pony. Like Queen was like that too. Queen could play all different types of music, and that's what was great about it. And that's what I loved about them too. And I grew up on the Beatles and that sort of thing too. So the Beatles were always writing great melodic pop songs, and for me, melody and rhythm will always live on. And that's, if you listen to Risen, all these songs you can sing along with the choruses. They all got killer choruses, great verses, and even my solos, I write different chord progressions for that to make it almost like a song within a song. It's a whole different thing, and I tend to be a melodic player, even though I kick ass and knock the dick in the dirt when I play, but I'm still a melodic player, and I write for that, for melody, so people can remember the songs. And so, like I said, I wanted to give the people kind of put like everything Angel did in the blender in a sense. Like the first two albums, like I said, were more proggy, sounding. So 1975 is kind of like that. It's like an anthemic type of, it's kind of like a big production type of song, like the Fortune with a big keyboard intro, and then it goes into 1975, the song, and it's kind of, it's, people say when they hear that song it makes them cry, which I think is really, really cool, because it stirs an emotion in people, and so that kind of, so that's that type of thing. And then we got the poppier things that are really power pop things that are really cool too, and then we have ballads and then we have straight up rock and roll songs like Desire and that sort of thing, so. We kind of gave, a lot of reviewers have been saying that. They've been saying this is like all the whole Angel catalog thrown into a blender, and because everybody what the Angel catalog was like, yet and it just sounds amazing, and people just love it, and so, like I said, Angel's not a one-trick pony, and I never will be. Like when I write songs, I don't sit down and write, is this good for Angel? I write a song because I like the way it sounds or the way it feels, and then I say, okay, this is a song, guys, and then everybody puts their 2 cents in, and then we have it.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm glad that Angel's back. Now let's talk a little bit about the past. Here you are in the 70s. The music scene is booming. Bands like KISS and Aerosmith and everybody is going on and on and on. Angel had a very distinct sound, a very distinct look, and yet for some reason, come 79, 80, it just didn't get to that next level. What do you think was part of the problem? Was it just Casablanca and Neil Bogart that fell through the hole? Was it personalities with the band? Was it the singles weren't connecting with radio? Where do you think the band just couldn't get to that next step?
Well, when we first put Angel together, we didn't want to be a singles band. We wanted to be an album band like Zeppelin, that sort of thing. We weren't really a singles. We didn't consider ourselves writing singles. We were, we considered ourselves serious musicians and that sort of thing. We wanted to write, music that was sophisticated, good, and then that sort of thing. But and Angel also, when we got together, Angel was only together for about 2 weeks when we started writing our first songs together. Like The Tower was the very first song we wrote together, Greg and I and Frank, and so we had just started, becoming songwriters actually, and we got a record deal, and so we had to, we wrote those songs pretty quickly, and the first and second album, because in those days you had to put 2 albums a year out, so you had to, you spent the time on the road playing all the time, and there wasn't MTV back then, so you had to play every little town in the United States in order to get exposure and be seen, unless you got a big radio hit. I mean, it's the same with KISS. KISS, had 4 albums out before the live album came out, and then that exploded. And KISS never really got any airplay either until they had Beth, which was a ballad. Because back in those days, even though it was FM radio, it wasn't like FM radio in the early 70s when they were playing album cuts. FM radio became like AM radio. It was all playing the top 10. And a lot of the singles were bands that were kind of light and like Fleetwood Mac or Peter Frampton Comes Alive. That was kind of light stuff, And so I think Angel was considered a little too heavy. Also, even and then we couldn't really get any tour support because. I mean, not tour support. We couldn't. We every time we would go on tour and get on a big tour with a big band, we got thrown off because we were such a threat to these bands, because we would come on and blow everybody away, and then these bands started thinking well, let's get these guys off the tour, and so we were forced to headline prematurely in smaller markets, and that sort of thing. So it was hard to get on really big tours. We got some, but it was still difficult. And at one point, the record company, the radio station thought we were like a punk band. I have no idea why that was the case. I mean, of course, nobody was playing punk music on the radio back then. That was just an underground kind of thing that got big. But and then of course, the MTV wasn't, when Angel was around, there wasn't any MTV, and Angel broke up just as MTV was coming in. And if we had been around for MTV, it would have been a different story. We would have broken wide open, because we were primed for the look of Angel and when we sat on MTV. Because back then you had to tour everywhere just to be seen. Once MTV came out, you were seen 24 hours a day, all day long, and so it broke bands overnight. So if we had been around for MTV, I think it would have been a different story. In fact, I know it would have been. But what happened was, because the Casablanca folded, the band actually just kind of fell apart too, because we couldn't do anything because we were under contract, so we couldn't record as Angel with anybody else. And so, it is what it is. I mean, it's one of those things. I don't know.
It's just one of those the mysteries of life. Back in 2018, I think we were out in Vegas, and then Greg Giuffria showed up and played with you on stage, which was very exciting for fans. Talk to me about that moment, but also, why is Greg not more involved? Do you think on the next album he might do some special guesting? Is there some ill will there? Are things positive? Is he just, over the, do you see yourself working with him again? He even has guest appearances.
Well, we did this it was a hair metal award show or whatever it was out in Las Vegas, and we got presented an award for I can't remember what it was, but there was a reward out there, and we walked the red carpet, and that was the first time Angel had all been together as a whole band. We went out there and we did a big interview with Eddie Trunk and all that kind of stuff, and we all got together. And it was good to see everybody. And we had a dinner afterwards, and Gregg and I, and we all sat around talking. And Gregg was really excited about maybe putting the band back together, Angel back together. And at that time, my solo album had just come out, so I wasn't thinking about that, But we talked about that at dinner, and he said, "Yeah, well, maybe in the future we'll do that, And then, of course, once that dinner was over, we all went our separate ways. It was never brought up again. And Gregg, has his own business out there, and Gregg has had some health issues too. So. But then we played in Vegas, and of course Gregg came in and and sat in, and it was great. It was fun. It's great to see him and fun to see him and stuff. And he sounded great and that whole thing, And then when he heard that, but that was the Punky and Frank thing. That wasn't Angel when we toured Vegas that time when Gregg sat in with us. And then when we said we were putting Angel back together, as Angel and recorded like that, there was a. I don't think Gregg really wanted us to use the name Angel, that sort of thing. You know what I mean? But when I asked, I said, well, Gregg, why don't you? We would love to have you play on the record. Come in and play, and stuff. And he said, yeah, I'd like to do that, but he never really followed up on it. So I just got the feeling he didn't. He just really wasn't as interested. But at the same time, I thought he was trying to put the brakes on us too. So but of course we weren't going to let that happen. So, there's not any ill will. I mean, once I talked to him, I said, well, we're going to do it, because, it's my band too, you know what I mean? So anyway, so we did that, and he never actually, came into play, but, it's I don't know, it's one of those, like I said, he's got his own life out there in Vegas, and he's doing that, and I don't really think he doesn't really, he left the music business and just really, really hated it after that. He decided he doesn't want to be involved in the music business again, ever again. You know what I mean? So, for whatever reasons, so I love Gregg. I love all those guys. But they just weren't ready. They weren't available. Because we were going to go on tour. And Gregg was saying, well, where are you going to be playing? I said, we may be playing some big places, maybe some small places. It doesn't matter. We're going to be playing. And so I think he just, I don't think he was up for the challenge, maybe. I'm not sure, really, but, because it's tough, to get out there and on the road and stuff and travel, and play, So, like I said, I think his health was not well. I think he's doing okay now, but he had some iffy moments there for a while, apparently. But,
yeah.
So I often, if he would want to come in again on the next album, I'd love to have him play and maybe write a tune or two, or sit down and write a song with me. It's really up to them. I put my hand out and said, "Hey, come on and play," and they did, and it just never gelled, never happened. So, we move on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we move on, and I think fans would love it.
And I got to tell you, Charlie's a great keyboard player. I mean, if you listen, have you heard the album Risen?
I have. Of course.
Okay, well, you listen to Charlie. I mean, the way I got Charlie in my band, the Punky Meadows band, was, we were auditioning keyboard players, and Chandler, the singer I had at the time, he said, and we were looking for keyboard players. We were going to use a keyboard player in B.B. Buell's band. We were thinking about him. And then Chandler said, Charlie plays keyboards for me in a lot of different projects, and he's a big Angel fan. And he said, listen, if you can get me in that band, I know every Angel song by heart. So I thought, well, he really does. So, we had him sit in an audition, and he did. So he's a big, big Angel fan. So he knew all the Gregg stuff, so it was a no-brainer. So we brought him into the band, and you can hear Charlie on like the beginning of the whole keyboard thing in the beginning of 75. It's like a Greg Giuffria kind of composition. So he's a really good keyboard player. So and a lot of reviews have said that that Gregg is really not missed in this band because Charlie's really, really good. And that's what you do. You have to move on. And new blood comes in, and sometimes it's good for the band. To get excited. And like Eddie Trunk said to us, he said, when you have the lead singer and the guitar player, that's the band, really. Now, even though Gregg was a big part of Angel, of course, without a doubt, but still, it's like Jagger and Richards, or Tyler and Perry, or Page and Plant. That no matter what they have in the band, it's always going to sound like Led Zeppelin when you have Page and Plant in the band. So
of course.
So we have that in this band, and now we have even like Danny's such a great addition to the band. He's a great songwriter, he's very talented, great guitar player. and him and I do the producing and stuff in the band. So, this is actually I think is really, it's a really good band. So I don't have any regrets about it. So I'm actually excited about it. It's so much fun to get in the studio with these guys and get on stage and play with them. And they bring it too when they play live. They don't mess around. We get up there with like a bunch of 20-year-olds up there on stage playing. Everybody says that, and it is because we love what we do. And like I said, they're all really great players, and they're really good people, which is a big part of the battle. Because you get a lot of people that come in and they have big egos and stuff. But these cats are really, really good people too at the same time. So we're really happy.
And you should be, and of course, I wasn't suggesting that it's not Angel without Gregg. Of course, that's.
Oh no, I know. Well, but Gregg was a big part of Angel. He really was. It was a big sound. Gregg was a big personality, and he was a great keyboard player, and a lot of that stuff was very heavily keyboard oriented. So. Gregg was a big part of the band, and that's why when we got Charlie, he was a good fit for the band because he did know all of Gregg's stuff, and he was a big Angel fan. So, it was an easy fit and like a glove, like a hand inside a glove. So, it's worked out well. So,
It has worked out remarkably. Now, I'm going to ask you the question that everybody's asked you for the last 35 years, but everybody, we always talk about Gene Simmons of KISS discovered the band, but sometimes when Gene Simmons says he's discovered a band, it's like he saw you in a club once and he happened to be in the room. How important was this whole Gene Simmons discovery thing? And is that more myth or fact?
Well, it's fact that he saw us, that KISS saw us, and we just put Angel together in this little nightclub called Bogies in Washington D.C. I think we'd been playing there for maybe 2 weeks or something, and we were getting all these managers were coming down. We started a bidding war all of a sudden because when we put Angel together, we knew we had something special. We had the flash pots going off in this little bar, and it would knock all the whiskey bottles off the shelves and stuff, and KISS had been playing at the Capitol Center in D.C. and they, like a lot of times bands will go out to clubs afterwards. Well, they wound up coming to the club Bogies, and we played down there. It was Gene, Paul, and Ace, and they saw us, and of course they freaked out. They loved us. And Gene thought we were great. And I would do this move where I hold my hand over my head and point to my guitar neck, and Gene copied that move and looked at me and said, "Punky, this." He goes, "Classic." You know what I mean? So they loved the band. They said, "Oh, Glitter hits DC," and they thought it was great. And so then, make a long story short, we went out to California and we were shopping a record deal, and we went to different record companies. And our manager said, "Hey, there's this new company called Casablanca. They have KISS and stuff like that, and maybe we should go with them because they're a smaller label. You won't get lost in the shuffle like on a big label with Capitol and stuff. They'll put a lot into you, and also KISS is on that record on that label." So I said, "Okay, let's check it out." So our manager called Neil Bogart up and said, "Hey, listen, I got this band called Angel. They're really good. KISS has seen them play and think they're great, and we'd like to, audition for you and let you and have you check the band out." So Neil said, he said, "I'll tell you what, KISS is playing in Anaheim in a couple of weeks. I'll have Angel open up for them, and that way I can see the band. Let me get back to you. I'm going to call Gene Simmons and see what he thinks." So they hang up, and then Neil calls back about 15 minutes, and he goes, "I'll tell you what, I'll sign the band sight unseen because Gene Simmons says under no way will Angel ever open for KISS." So, in a way, I guess you can say he's responsible. You know what I mean? But anyway, after that, we said cool. But then when he came down, we did play for him. There's plays like he's just playing, and of course that solidified the whole thing. So there's some truth about that. It played a part. I guess you could say. I think if we would have played for Neil Bogart though, auditioning without the whole KISS thing, he still would have signed the band up because Angel, we had bidding wars everywhere at the time we first came out because it was just we were really cool when we first came out.
Yeah, and you're still very cool. Risen is a great band. The band has a great look. You've got great musicians, and by the way, speaking of Neil Bogart, it's a shame that movie they were going to make about him, Spinnin Gold, they've halted production because I was so looking forward to seeing.
Me too.
I know.
I loved. Neil was a great guy. He really was. He was behind the band 100%. You know what I mean? And then he started that record company with nothing. He has, he ran his credit cards up, and he had I think a Johnny Carson album or something on there that didn't do anything. And then, he was practically broke, and then he got Donna Summers, and of course she blew up. And then and finally Kiss blew up after like 4 or 5 albums, and then the whole disco thing he started too, and he then he became the golden boy of Hollywood. But we would have meetings. The last meeting we had with Neil was, we sat down and we had just finished Sinful, and he was saying that you guys, I'm going to make you. You guys are going to, you guys are going to make it. He said we're going to win the war in this. He said, in fact, I'm going to write the debt that you have on Casablanca off of you guys. We were into Casablanca for like $1.5 million at the time, And he said, I'm going to write that off and the whole thing. And we played Simple. He loved it. And he would always light a joint up, you know what I mean? And we'd all sit back and blast it in his office, on the stereo system. And he was a great guy, and he was behind us, and he always put us in the movies. When he always did a movie, he put us in the movie somewhere, like Fox's. When they had the TV show, WKRP in Cincinnati, they would have, every now and then they would have a poster Angel on the radio station back there and stuff, So Neil was a great guy, and, unfortunately he passed away at a very young age, and it was very sad because, like I said, once Neil Bogart was gone from Casablanca, the heart and soul was gone, and that place was just run by a bunch of college kids in there, and that's what happened with Angel. They couldn't promote the album anymore, like the double live album, it just got left on the ground, so nobody promoting it and stuff. And so, Neil was Casablanca, and he was an innovator, you know what I mean? And he really, he was, he could see when things were great, and he was really cool. And it was just sad that he went away. I wish they had finished that movie too, Did you see that what was that thing on Showtime or HBO about the rock business? I can't remember what it was called now. It was only on for one season, but it was really cool when they were just getting into the part about Neil Bogart.
I remember that.
What was it called? It was really
it was just like a very simple name, like record company or something. Vinyl or something like that.
Vinyl, that was it. That was Vinyl. It was Vinyl, yeah. And it was really great. And they were just getting into the whole Neil Bogart Casablanca thing, and then and that first season, and then of course, and then come back the second season. Unfortunately, because I guess it was too expensive or something. But that was such a great thing. But yeah, Bogart was a great cat, and and that. When we first went with Neil, they had this house up in the Hollywood Hills with 3 or 4 bedrooms in it, and they had the little, each bedroom was allotted for promotion and something else or whatever, and it was just such a family oriented thing up there, and they were always so happy to see you, and people would smoke joints and get high, and it was just really cool. And then of course when he got bigger, then he got a nice big office building right on Sunset Strip there. But Neil was an innovator. He was a great guy. It's too bad he's gone.
It's too bad he's gone. And Spinnin Gold was filming in Montreal, and they ran into production issues, and the budget got pulled, and the whole thing sort of fell apart. And it was like, oh, damn it.
I wonder why. It's too bad.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of saw the story, and I know that the Canadian, what's it called, ACTRA or whatever it's called, they put out a notice, don't work with this production company because of these issues, and I can send that to you.
Really?
Yeah, and it was just like, damn it. So hopefully somebody comes along with the purse strings open and says, I'm going to get this back on track. Let's get this done, because it's a great story, and you had Samuel Jackson, you had all these people in it, and
yeah, I know. Wasn't Gene Simmons involved in that too, or something? Or not?
Gene was. Listen, in Montreal on August 16th, KISS played the Bell Center. They were supposed to recreate a 1975 show in sound check, and they had customized instruments. Some of my friends who live in town had recreated some of the old instruments and had painted them to have that look, and it was all going to be done. And about a week out, we got notice, hey, they've pulled the funding, project's done, forget about it. And it was just like, damn it.
Oh, man, that bites them off. That sucks.
Yep.
Like you said, hopefully maybe somebody will come along and reignite it or something, I hope.
Well, I mean, you're telling the story of KISS and Donna Summer and Angel. There is going to be fan interest. People are going to want to see it, so,
Yeah, it'd be great. I mean, all my friends and everybody was watching. We all watched Vinyl. We said we can't wait. It was such a great, show and stuff. We were so excited about that, and then the plug got pulled on that. I don't know.
Oh well, c'est la vie. But on that, Angel though is not dead. You have risen. And
yep, exactly.
And I'm glad you're back. I love my old school rock and roll, but I love old school rock and roll that's making new rock and roll, not just living on the glories of the past. And you are not.
Me too.
Yeah.
That's the thing, and that's what bothers you about classic rock radio. You know what I mean? Classic rock radio only plays the same songs from the bands from back then. You know what I mean? Like they only play Cheap Trick, Surrender, or whatever that thing. I mean, even though Cheap Trick puts a new album out, they never play the new stuff, and they should do that. These classic rock stations should play the new stuff when a classic rock band comes out because fans want to hear that. It would make them seem more vital too and more up to date. Instead of hearing the same 10 songs over and over again.
I agree with you so much, and I've always said it. Since you mentioned Eddie Trunk, and so I'll mention Sirius XM. They've got this, Hair Nation channel, and they play Bon Jovi and they play Def Leppard, but all those bands still make new music. Why would it be so difficult on a Sunday night from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. just have an hour where you feature some of their hits from the last 10 years? Doesn't have to be, brand new, but at least from the last. And I'm sure fans would listen and go, "Oh, really?
Yeah,
Angel's got a new Under the Gun? Oh, I haven't heard that. Oh, I'm going to go." It would help everybody.
It would be great. I mean, and also it would promote them too. I mean, they would get even more listeners, I think. You know what I mean? Because I know for me, like I listen to class rock radio every now and then, but I could kind of get bored with it because I've heard those songs so many times. You know what I mean? And I want to hear something new, and that's why I want to turn into a country channel because I hear something new. You know what I mean? But if they would play like these classic rock bands, because they're always after Cheap Trick just did a new album 2 or 3 years ago, and I never heard on the radio one time. I heard Surrender all the time and stuff. And if they would just get out, same with Springsteen, anybody, they play the old stuff, but they never play the new stuff. And if they would do that, I think they would continue to get even bigger listeners and followers. If they would do that.
I agree. And I have a friend in radio out in Minnesota. He actually started a show just last week where he's a classic rock station, but that classic rock station where he is has an hour show where they're dedicating it to new music. So there's one voice in the Midwest that's like, hey, these bands have something new to say. Let's play it. So anyway.
Well, I hope they play Risen because, I tell you, I think people will start tuning into that show more than the other ones probably eventually once the word gets out because people love it, man. People kept saying, I wish Angel would record a new record, all these years. I wish they would do it. And then we do it. And when we do it, they love it. You know what I mean? And so then it's inspirational to me. I mean, I love the fans that they love it too, and it really makes me happy. And it goes to show that these bands still have a lot of life in them, man. Let's do it. Let's hear it. Because it's awesome. It's just good music. It's fun, man. So
it is, and you're still managed by Danny Stanton, right?
No. Danny never managed us. He was kind of
helps you
a little bit. With me. We just came back from Belgium and the UK, and we did a festival in Belgium, and Danny Stanton had organized that, and he got us on that with Dee Snyder. We did that, and Danny's trying to put some other shows together. Danny's going to get us some shows in Australia too, so we're going to be doing that. We work with Danny sporadically off and on, he's always trying to help, so we're with him off and on. But we had a manager for a while, but he really wasn't doing much. So really, Danny actually, Danny Aniello, he's pretty much, I think, that's the manager of this band, and I have to give him his props because he does really well. Danny wears a lot of different hats. So he's a talented guy. So.
Well, I was just going to say that said is I'll send over Mark, who's out in Minnesota. I'll send Mark's information over to Danny, and he can maybe get it to you so that maybe we can get some Risen on the air and not just be a classic rock. Because it's a very vital album. I mean, you've got these little more than 15 songs that are just fucking kick ass, and people need to hear it.
And and it's it's on vinyl too. It's double vinyl too as well. Cleopatra's great, and the thing is, that's what we. In fact, on my solo, I had like 17 songs on it, and we at first we said, well, maybe we have too many songs. We said, no, let's give the fans everything we got, because we can always write more songs, and it's hard to say this song's not going to make it, you know what I mean? And this song will, because they're like your children or whatever, but it is a great album, and people love it. I listen to it and I like it too, you know what I mean, when I listen to it. So that kind of, passed the taste test for me, because I know a lot of times in the early days of Angel, I would hear it back and I would say, okay, next record, I was always a little displeased with, with some of the stuff on Angel, because, I was my own worst critic, I guess. I could have done that better. But on this album, I'm really happy. I love the way it sounds, and it gets me pumped up. When I'm ready to do a workout, I put it on and blast it, man. I pound the weights out good and strong, man, because it kicks ass, it's really good. A lot of fun.
It is. And on that, Punky, thank you. Merci beaucoup. Absolute pleasure. And hopefully we'll get you up to Canada, get you up to Montreal and Ottawa and all those great places. And, hey, merci.
Well, thank you, Mitch. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. I hope to talk to you soon again.
Absolutely. Cheers.
All right. Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.
This has been Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. For more exclusive content and interviews, subscribe on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, and many more. Follow Mitch on all the socials, especially Twitter, @Mitch Lafon, and on Instagram, @Mitch_Lafon. Get your Mitch merch now at loudtracks.com/Mitch.